All right, welcome to the camera-source.com installation of the Toyota 4Runner SUV. This one in particular is a 2006, but this install is fairly universal. Just note that some of the mechanicals might be somewhat different, but the concept is the same. We simply mount the camera in the bezel above the license plate, and we run the power and the video cable to the front of the vehicle where we tap into the power. So we start by removing the back of the lift gate. So we have to remove the plastic, and there's some push pins and some bolts that are holding that into place. You can see that the push pins just basically, once you get a firm grab underneath, just pull straight out. Just give it a nice firm tug. And then once you get them all released, you can pull it straight back and just watch the weather stripping on the back side of the glass. There's a membrane here that gets keeps the moisture out. We want to make sure we remove the membrane, and that gives us access to the bolts that hold the bezel onto the back of the tailgate. We're going to remove that bezel so that we can mount our camera into that. So these are 10mm bolts, and we're just going to go ahead and remove them with a ratchet, with a long extension. Some of these are protected by a hole plug. You just have to remove the cap for the hole, and that'll give you access to the remaining bolts that are holding that bezel in place. We have to remove the locking mechanism. So remove the locking mechanism from underneath. That pulls out straight off the back of the lift gate. There's little plastic push tabs that get pushed through. You can see we're releasing them here with a screwdriver. One of them is behind. You can see where the red circle is. It's behind the wiper motor, so we have to remove the three 10mm bolts from the wiper motor in order to gain access to the push tab. Once the wiper motor is out of the way, you can just push in the prong on the side of the tab and it'll push straight out, which time the bezel will come straight off the back of the liftgate. You can see behind the bezel we have the rubber grommet. That's where our wire is going to go through for the camera. The next step is mounting the camera onto the bezel. So we just hold it in the position and mark it with a marker so that we know where the holes are going to be. There's going to be 3 holes total, 2 for holding the camera on and 1 for the cable to pass through. The hole sizes are in the installation document. For the grommet hole, it's best to start with a small drill bit first to make yourself a little bit of space in there so that you don't remount the plastic too hard. This grommet here just goes in right after the hole's drilled. Just pushes into place. That's just to protect the cable. After the grommet is installed, we can just install some pilot or drill some pilot holes for where the camera is going to mount, just to give us something for the screw to initially get started. Then we can push our cable through the grommet and pull it all the way through, and eventually just mount the camera on the outside of the liftgate. Make sure that all the holes line up. There is a wedge that's included with this kit, and that small plastic wedge will give you more or less angle on the camera if desired, but you can just test it without putting the wedge in first, just to make sure that you don't or that the angle matches with what you're looking for. You can see here the finished product, the cable going through the grommet. Next thing we need to do is get the cable to push through the grommet in the back of the lift gate So we'll just pull out all the slack, and then eventually we need to get a hole started through that rubber grommet. We'll do that from the inside. It's easier just to use a drill to get a starter hole set, and then you can use a Phillips screwdriver or something, a tool, to make that hole just a little larger for the head of the cable to pass through. So here you can see we're just pushing the head of the cable through the grommet, and once it passes through, it'll give us a nice tight seal around that cable. So we just pull the slack all the way straight through. And once it's through, we can put the grommet back into place. Now what we need to do is remove the boot for the wire harness passage into the actual liftgate from inside of the vehicle. So we need to remove just a couple of electrical components here to gain access to be able to route those wires. And we're going to use a fishing tool. In this case, we just used a metal coat hanger we had laying around, but any fishing tool will do. Run it up through there. You can do this part in a couple different ways. We chose to make the connection at the bottom of the liftgate. It may be advisable to run the RCA cable actually up into the top of the tailgate so that your connections are all made at the top by the wiper motor. So in case you ever have to gain access to them again, you can get to it. You can see here the rubber boot. We're just basically taking apart the connector that holds it to the liftgate. We need to slice a hole, just a small hole, so that we can push the cable through there. And then we need to fish it through this rubber grommet the same we did at the top. Once the cables run through, you just push everything back into place. You can see here we got the cables routed through. We'll push them through the body and then pull them out through the top of the headliner. Okay, so here you can see we're just fishing the wires down through the body, and then we'll snap that rubber grommet back in place. The goal here is to get those wires down along the bottom panels, the side panels, the interior of the vehicle. So we just pull that weather strip out of the way, as you can see, and then push that grommet back in, snap everything back into place, and we're finished with that portion of the install. So here you can see we just pull the rubber seal out of the way along the edge of the body molding there, and that'll give us access to the power wires and a place to run the wires. Here we're splicing in the power wire that comes off the RCA cable to the power wire for the camera, and that'll get us power all the way to the front of the vehicle when we run the RCA cable. Then you just want to tape your connections, both the electrical connection and the RCA, the video connection. Just tuck the cables up out of the way. And just be careful that none of the wires get pinched into the side of the panel. And once that's all back in place, you can just put the rubber seal back in once everything's back into place. Now here we're just going to transfer the cable from the outside of the vehicle to the inside of the vehicle so we can gain access to the side panels. You just need to remove the screw off the bottom molding. And once that screws off, that molding will just pull straight up. It takes a little bit of force, but those pins will actually release, and then you can just pull it straight off far enough to gain access to run the cable underneath. There's another screw that has to be removed from the side panel in order to lift that up out of the way. Once you've got everything in there, you can just tuck the RCA cable along the side panel of the vehicle, and it should stay put fairly well. And then we'll just run that all the way to the front of the vehicle. Oh, in the back, we want to put everything back together before moving down to the side of the vehicle. So just replace the screws the same way you took them back out and just make sure it snaps in.